My name is Elena Marlowe, and I'm 31 years old. I'm pretty sure I witnessed the death of my future in under a minute. Not a dramatic death. Not the kind with screaming or broken glass or tears running down someone's face in the rain. No. Mine died quietly, elegantly, in the soft gold light of sunset, at the scenic overlook where Jason and I had our first real date 5 years ago. And the worst part? I was the one who paid for the ring that killed it. Jason and I had been together for 5 years, 5 whole years, long enough to build a life that looked solid from the outside, long enough to collect routines, shared takeout spots, Sunday habits, inside jokes, and all the little rituals that make you think history means safety. For a long time, I believed we were heading somewhere real. I believed all those years were building towards something stable, intimate, and lasting. For a while, that was true. Or maybe I was only in love with the version of him that existed before everything became performance. When I met Jason, he was funny in a way that felt effortless. He could make a bad day lighter without trying too hard. He liked quiet places. He liked being away from crowds. He used to say our best moments were the ones no one else saw. We took road trips with cheap coffee and no itinerary. We hiked trails without posting them. We ate takeout on the floor when the table was covered in laundry and still somehow felt like we were doing life right. Then, slowly, he changed. Not in one obvious, dramatic way. It happened in little pieces. A complaint here, a comment there, a new obsession with how things looked, how places photographed, what people would think. Our relationship stopped being something we lived and started becoming something he evaluated from the outside, like he was watching us instead of being in it. Last year, for our anniversary, I booked us a secluded cabin in the mountains. Fireplace, hiking trails, wraparound porch, stars so bright they looked unreal. I thought it was romantic. Jason spent the first 4 hours complaining that the woods didn't have good lighting, that the cabin was too rustic, and that none of it fit the image he wanted to project. His image. The man posted mirror selfies and acted like he was a luxury label. I laughed at first, because I thought he had to be joking. Then I realized he wasn't, and something small and cold moved through me. It should have been a warning. It was one of many. I just kept choosing not to name them. His friends were another warning. Tiffany, Madison, the whole polished, brunch table orbit around him. A few weeks before everything fell apart, one of their friends got engaged. I was there when they dissected the ring photo online like it was a crime scene. Too small, wrong cut, dated, embarrassing. Jason laughed right along with them. Not awkwardly, not reluctantly. He laughed because he thought it was funny. That should have told me everything. Instead, I kept loving the version of him I missed. A few months ago, Jason started talking more seriously about marriage. He said he wanted to propose soon. He said he didn't want anything generic. He wanted the ring to feel personal, meaningful, designed around me instead of copied from whatever his friends were posting. He even told me he wanted my input because, in his words, if I'm giving you something for the rest of your life, it should actually feel like you. I believed him, so I helped. I went to a local artisan jeweler named Serena Vale, a woman whose work felt less like jewelry and more like memory turned into metal and stone. I told her what I loved, what Jason used to love, the pieces of us that had once felt real. I told her about that storm blue shade of sky right before nightfall, the color Jason once said was the most beautiful thing in nature. Together, Serena and I designed a one-of-a-kind ring with a deep sapphire center stone and delicate leaf-like silver details around it. It was elegant, unusual, intimate. It meant something. It also cost $10,000. That amount mattered. I'm not reckless with money. $10,000 is not some casual luxury to me. It is sacrifice. It is discipline. It is saying no to other things because you believe you are saying yes to your future. Jason said he would pay me back once his quarterly bonus came through. The ring was purchased in my name, held at Serena's shop, and the plan was simple. When he was ready, he would pick it up and use it to propose. Yesterday, he told me to dress nicely because he had something special planned. He took me to the scenic overlook where we had our first real date. The sunset was perfect. The air was cool. There was a picnic basket in the back seat. Champagne, fancy cheese, crackers he always insisted were life-changing. The valley below us looked endless. For a brief, foolish moment, I let myself believe this was it. This was the memory we'd tell for the rest of our lives. Jason reached into his jacket and pulled out the wooden ring box. My heart almost stopped. Not because I was surprised, because I wanted so badly for this to be real. He looked at me, then at the empty overlook, and his expression shifted. "Elena," he said, "before I do this, are you seriously okay with this setup?" I thought he was nervous. I smiled and said, "Of course." He frowned, actually frowned. Then he looked around again at the empty space, the lack of people, the absence of witnesses. "There's no one here," he said. "No photographer, no reservation, no one to see it." My smile faded. "I thought that was the point," I said. "Just us." He opened the box. The sapphire caught the sunset and lit up exactly the way Serena promised it would. For 1 second, it looked beautiful enough to save the moment. Then Jason's face fell, not with emotion, with disappointment. He stared at the ring, the way someone looks at the wrong order in a restaurant. "It's cute," he said. "Cute." That word landed harder than anger would have. He kept staring. "It really doesn't read engagement ring. It looks more like a promise ring. And the stone isn't even a diamond." I felt the world tilt. "This is the ring you asked me to help design," I said slowly. "Yes, but seeing it here like this." He shook his head. "It just looks cheap. I can't propose with something that looks cheap." Cheap. My $10,000 ring. My time. My planning. My faith. Cheap. Then he said the sentence that finished whatever was left of us. "And honestly, if I'm doing this, I'm not doing it in the middle of nowhere with nobody around to capture it." I don't remember much after that. Just fragments. Closing the ring box. The taste of metal in my mouth. The drive home in silence while he sighed in the passenger seat like I had somehow disappointed him. When we got back to my apartment, the apartment that was in my name, on my lease, furnished mostly with my things, he said he was too emotionally overwhelmed to talk and shut himself in the bedroom. Too emotionally overwhelmed. I sat on the couch in my own living room and stared at the dealership tab that had been open on my laptop for weeks. I'd been building my dream car online for fun, the way people fantasize about lives they assume are impractical. Jason wanted a public spectacle and a bigger stone. Sitting there with the word cheap still burning through me, I had my first clear thought of the night. Maybe I was done funding disappointment. I didn't sleep. I replayed every second until dawn. Around 6 in the morning, I grabbed my jacket, my keys, the ring box, and left without making a sound. Serena was opening her shop when I arrived. She saw the box in my hand and immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. I set the box on the counter and said, "He called it cheap." She blinked once, slow and disbelieving, like her brain refused to accept what she'd heard. I gave her the short version, the overlook, the comments, the lack of photographer, the fact that he cared more about witnesses than the moment itself. By the time I finished, she took off her glasses and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. "That man," she said quietly, "does not deserve a woman who knows how to love with intention." Something in me cracked then, not in a way that made me weaker, but in a way that finally let the truth in. "He didn't even see it," I said. "Not the ring, not the meaning, not me." "Because he was never looking at the ring," Serena replied. "He was looking past it, at the audience he thought should be there." That was exactly it. The ring was purchased in my name, and Serena didn't hesitate. She processed the return, handed me a full refund check for $10,000, and said, "You're not losing anything. You're getting something back." She was right. I walked out of her shop with a check in my pocket and the strangest feeling in my chest. Not peace, not yet, but something close to clarity. The responsible part of me said to deposit it, put it back into savings, be smart, be mature. Instead, I drove straight to the dealership. The place had just opened. Rows of polished vehicles sat under bright lights like possibilities I had spent too long denying myself. A salesman approached, young and eager, and asked if I was looking for anything in particular. I pulled out the check and said, "I just liquidated a very disappointing future. I'd like to reinvest in something more reliable." He blinked, then smiled like he had met either a lunatic or his favorite customer of the month. 2 hours later, I walked out with the keys to my dream vehicle in my hand. Not because I was being reckless, because for the first time in a very long time, I was choosing something for myself before anyone else got to tell me how it would look. When I got back to the apartment around noon, Jason was in the kitchen with coffee and an expression that told me he still thought this situation was recoverable on his terms. "There you are," he said. "Are you ready to apologize and talk about how we fix this?" Fix it! Like I had ruined something. I didn't answer. I just pulled the new key fob from my pocket and clicked it. Outside, from the street below, my vehicle chirped. Jason froze. "What was that?" I gave the key a little jingle. Can't talk right now. I have a few things to take care of. Then I turned and walked back out, leaving him standing there in confused silence. I drove around for a while, long enough for the shock to settle into something sharper. By the time I came back, Jason was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, posture stiff, ready to reclaim control. "We're talking now," he said. I set my keys on the table and let the sound hang between us. He launched straight in. He said he'd been thinking, that he was willing to move past what happened, that we could still fix the situation if I would just understand why the proposal setting was all wrong. He talked about optics, presentation, how the moment had felt small, how there had been no one around to witness something that important. I listened until I couldn't anymore. I thought about how it would feel, I told him. You only thought about how it would look. That irritated him immediately. He said we should go back to Serena, get the ring, and choose something more appropriate. That was the point where I told him I had already returned it. The silence that followed was sharp. You did what? I returned it this morning. Full refund. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, then anger. Without talking to me first? There was nothing to discuss, I said. You didn't want it. That's not what I said. You said it looked cheap. He clenched his jaw. I said it wasn't right. No, I said. You said cheap. Then came the question that told me exactly who he was. What did you do with the money? Not are you okay? Not how could you? Not did you really end this? The money. I let him sit in that silence before I lifted the key fob, jingled it once, and let the sound answer for me. The chirp from outside came through the window. His eyes widened. You didn't. I did. You spent our money on a car? That was when I finally stopped softening anything. No, I spent my money. The money I fronted for my ring because you promised you'd pay me back. The ring you insulted before you ever even put it on my hand. He stared at me. I kept going. You didn't reject a stone, Jason. You rejected the meaning behind it. You rejected me. You wanted a performance, not a future. He called me dramatic, childish, impulsive, said I was throwing away 5 years over one bad moment. I told him the truth. You didn't destroy 5 years in one moment. You revealed what those 5 years had really turned into. He didn't like that. People like Jason never like being described accurately. Then, exactly as I expected, he reached for outside reinforcement. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up. Calls, texts, notifications stacked on top of each other. Tiffany, Madison, others from his orbit. I answered Tiffany on speaker. She launched right in, accusing me of humiliating him, of overreacting, of being petty and cruel. I asked if he had told her what actually happened at the Overlook. There was a pause, long enough to tell me no, he hadn't. So I told her myself. I said I had helped design the ring because Jason said he wanted something personal. I said I had fronted the money because he promised he'd pay me back. I said that when the moment came, he rejected it because there was no photographer, no audience, and the sapphire didn't look expensive enough for the story he wanted to tell people. That changed the air on the call. Not enough to make her apologize. Just enough to make her less certain. When she called me petty for buying the car, I said, he told me my future looked cheap, so I invested in something that actually knows how to move forward. Jason hissed at me to hang up. I didn't. Tiffany tried the, you don't throw away 5 years over one bad moment line. I told her, no, you don't. You reveal them. Then I hung up and blocked her. Then Madison. Then the rest. Jason watched me do it. When I turned back to him, I said, this is not your audience anymore. He asked if I was really done. Yes, I said. Then I told him he had until the end of the week to get his things out of my apartment. That part needed no drama because the facts were simple. The lease was mine. The utilities were in my name. Most of the furniture was mine. He had moved into my space. Now he was leaving it. The rest of the week passed almost quietly. No screaming matches, no dramatic collapse. Just a man slowly realizing that all his usual tools, sulking, superiority, blame, outside validation, weren't working anymore. At first, he hovered. Then he sulked. Then he tried half apologies that weren't apologies. You know I didn't mean it like that. You're taking it too far. You're going to regret this. I looked him in the eye and told him, you said exactly what you meant. By the 4th day, he was packing. Not gracefully, not cleanly, just shoving clothes into bags with the offended energy of someone who still believed consequences were happening unfairly to him. I didn't help. I didn't fight. I just moved around him like he was already gone. On the last morning, I woke to silence. Real silence. His side of the closet half empty, drawers open, suitcases lined up by the door. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, took my time. He stood behind me and said, my Uber's on the way. I nodded. After a long pause, he asked, "Is that really it?" "Yes." "You're not even going to say anything?" I turned then and looked at him properly. "I did," I said, "at the Overlook." That hit him harder than any argument had. The buzzer downstairs sounded. His ride. He grabbed the last suitcase, dragged it to the door, then stopped and turned back one last time. "You're going to regret this." I held his gaze and said, "I don't think so." Then he left. No slam, no explosion, just the sound of the door closing behind him. A little later, I grabbed my keys and headed downstairs. The day was bright, warmer than expected, strangely normal, and there he was on the sidewalk with 3 suitcases, furiously working his phone, probably trying to rewrite the ending for whoever would still listen. For a second, I just watched him. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but without the apartment, without the posture, without the certainty that other people would hand him the right version of reality. He looked like a man standing beside his own consequences. My vehicle was parked ahead, waiting. I got in, started the engine, and pulled slowly toward the street. As I passed him, he looked up. Our eyes met through the windshield. No yelling, no speech, no final scene. Just recognition. I smiled, easy, unbothered. Then I tapped the horn twice. Honk, honk. The look on his face shifted so quickly it was almost satisfying in slow motion. Shock, humiliation, disbelief. Then I drove on. I didn't look back right away. I let the distance do its work. When I finally checked the rearview mirror, he was still there on the sidewalk, surrounded by luggage, getting smaller every second. That was the moment everything settled. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. That night, the apartment felt different. Not empty, mine. His shoes were gone. His jackets were gone. His cologne was gone. The silence was no longer heavy. It was clean. I opened the windows and let fresh air move through every room. I made myself dinner without thinking about whether it looked impressive. I sat on the couch without checking my phone every 30 seconds. When an unknown number messaged later, I didn't even read it. I blocked it and moved on. Because by then, I understood something I should have understood long before. It was never about the ring. It was about what he valued. And it was about what I had finally stopped excusing. He wanted a status symbol, a bigger story, a version of love that could be validated from the outside. He never understood one very simple thing. The woman offering him a future was supposed to be the prize. And unlike that ring, that is not something anyone gets to call cheap.